Welcome to the Endpoints podcast, presented by the ALS Therapy Development Institute. I'm Jonathan Gang. Andrea Lytle Peet's passion for running started simply enough. At age 30, she had just moved to Washington, D.C. to be with her husband, David. Stuck in their house during the snowy D.C. winter, she started walking on a treadmill in their basement to keep active. Soon, she had signed up for a local 5K. Then she stepped up to a 10-miler. Then came marathons and triathlons. Within 3 years, she had begun training for a half Ironman. Then, at the age of 33, everything changed when she was diagnosed with ALS. In 4 months, she went from being the strongest she had ever been to walking with a cane. However, this would not be the end of her athletic career. Despite having ALS for almost a decade, she is still able to ride a recumbent bike, which she has used to participate in marathons all over the country. Recently, she reached a major milestone, completing at least one marathon in all 50 states. To commemorate this accomplishment and share her story to inspire others, Andrea is releasing 2 documents of her journey: a film, Go On Be Brave, and a memoir, Hope Fights Back. Today on Endpoints, Andrea and David join us to talk about how she achieved these accomplishments in the face of such adversity and why she believes it's important to share her story with the world.
As everyone who gets the diagnosis hears in one of their first meetings with a clinician, with a neurologist in getting the diagnosis, unfortunately, you get either literature or you get an oral recitation of these different statistics. The average lifespan after diagnosis is 2 to 5 years. Most people will not make it to that 5-year endpoint. And there's really no, because of how heterogeneous the disease is, there's really no way of telling whether you will be a slow progressor, a fast progressor, or some hybrid of the two, of going quickly and then plateauing and then going quickly again. In our time with the disease, we've seen people of all different shapes and sizes who progress at different rates. Andrea's quick progression, what we perceived as a quick progression at the outset of completing a half Ironman to walking with a walker, led us to think that how many more months are left in her life, let alone races for her. So after we got the diagnosis, she said, I want to do one more triathlon, just one. And so we found because she couldn't ride a standard 2-wheel bicycle, she didn't have the balance or the ability to catch herself at that point. We looked for a more stable way of her to be on wheels and to navigate around courses. And we found a recumbent trike dealership in central Pennsylvania that she could use first in triathlons, as I mentioned, but then later on in longer races, where she could use her legs to propel her forward while using her hands to pull on the brakes. She still has had and continues to have enough flexibility and dexterity in her hands to coordinate a slight pull to slow herself down or to stop herself completely. So the idea of taking on more races came about first because she didn't know how many more she would have left, but then hearkening back to that conversation that we had with a neurologist when she was diagnosed, she said to herself, if I get to the 5-year mark, I want to do something. I want to set some crazy goal. Thank goodness she made it to 5 years living with ALS. And she said, okay, now that I'm here, I want to set the craziest goal that I can think of. She can still use the recumbent trike. And so she said, I want to do a marathon, not just one, but I want to do a marathon in all 50 states. And so because most people with ALS don't make it to that 5-year mark, she knew she wanted to commemorate it and start a new journey after that point.
Yeah, I think I was only at a marathon number 7 at that point, but it was more about having the uh, uh, courage to start a new goal. So I was working towards something, not waiting for ALS to I catch up.
Yeah, there's this sense almost that we had. We don't want to speak for other people with the disease, but you know, upon receiving the diagnosis, it was almost like there was this countdown clock
Yeah.
going. And I think Andrea wanted to turn that on its head and say, look, I've made it past my expiration date, and I don't want to think in terms of what the countdown clock is. I want to count up, right? I want to count from 0 to 50 instead of down from now to whatever X number of years or weeks would be from now.
And so many of my friends with ALS didn't have the opportunity, the ability, or the lifespan to doing something like this. And so I really wanted to celebrate them and the time that I had left by living my life to the fullest and exploring while I had time.
Reaching her goal was extremely important for Andrea personally, but she also knew how much her story could mean to people in the ALS community and beyond, and that it was important for her to share her journey however she could.
Yeah, I think when when Andrea decided to take on the goal, she had great foresight to be able to see that hers was a story hers was a story that could be inspirational to people who we already know and love, and that know how crazy she is about. She's the kind of person that just giggles and laughs as she is absolutely climbing a mountain, the steepest mountain you've ever seen, and she's just enjoying herself. We knew that people close to us would enjoy seeing it. We hoped that it would be inspirational to people who were newly diagnosed or were in a place with the disease or with really any other challenge in their life, that that there are still ways to live a life even when you have gotten the worst news that you could. And we're also really lucky to have incredibly talented friends that wanted to work with us to share that story. So Miriam McSpadden and Brian Beckman of Fly Squirrel Films were they're local. They're in Durham, North Carolina, and Andrea had gotten to know them as a result of another project. And when Andrea approached them about the idea of following her story, I think before Andrea had even finished telling them about the project, they had started looking into flights for the next marathon in Nashville to come follow her along the way. And Meredith Atwood, who is a well-respected author, agreed to work with Andrea to get Andrea's story on paper, something that she had been working on for really since she was diagnosed, to try to kind of process it herself. Meredith started out as kind of a writing coach, but then I think both of them mutually understood that it was that the writing process and getting through Andrea's story was a co-author relationship that they wanted to explore. But to answer your question, I think bringing others along in our story, we knew that there was a community around Andrea that wanted to follow every step along the way, but we also hoped that we could create assets, for lack of a better term, that could survive well beyond the point when Andrea is finished racing, and show what a life with ALS can look like with the right amount of research and funding.
Yeah, and nothing else, we would raise awareness for ALS. We certainly didn't know that we would make it all the way to 50, but regardless, it is about trying and being brave enough to start.
Andrea and David say that the book and film serve as companion pieces to each other, both providing important insights into different aspects of her mission.
The film and the book are different. They both cover the racing, and the film is beautiful. But the book is the only way that I can tell my story in my own words and capture the inner dialogue and the processing and growth. But not to take away from the film. There is something they just did an amazing job. Just seeing my friends and my parents and my husband, and to witness that interaction, so genuine. So they're both great in different ways.
Yeah, I think the film does a wonderful job of capturing who Andrea was during the course of this 5-year journey and or 3-year journey, to get to 50. And the book does a wonderful job of providing viewers of the movie with that context on who she was and what drove her to create that journey in the first place, right? There were a number of other acts to Andrea's life before that journey ever took place. And Andrea describes the relationship with her parents, our relationship, the relationship with herself, in a lot of detail in the book.
With Go On Be Brave and Hope Fights Back, Andrea intends to provide inspiration to people facing ALS and other big challenges. However, it's not the only way that these projects are giving back to the community. Proceeds from both the book and the film will benefit ALS research at organizations, including ALS TDI.
So all of the proceeds from the film and my proceeds from the book will go to ALS research, primarily ALS TDI. We have believed in the mission of the organization, and as we have gotten to know everyone in the lab and in the development, we believe in what you are doing, and it is our honor to support your work.
Yeah, and specifically, I think Andrea and I have been committed to supporting this cause through preclinical research efforts and driving that kind of research. There are lots of wonderful organizations and companies out there who are doing things relating to phased clinical trial research for molecules and products that have moved along that level of the pipeline, as well as actual patient care, medical equipment, that kind of stuff. What we see as the focus and where the greatest need is in preclinical research projects that go to the root point of kind of defining what ALS is, whether ALS is an umbrella term, whether there are subtypes of the disease. Programs exactly like the ALS Research Collaborative, which is, much like Andrea's story. If you read the book, see the movie, you will see that her 50-state challenge was really, she was driven by the strength of other people living with ALS and hopes to pay it forward and inspire others. The ALS Research Collaborative is really a patient-driven effort to better define what the disease is, to better inform research, so that if there are research efforts that are going to fail, they are going to fail fast, and we can pivot to new and better research options to hopefully help patients down the line. And moreover, that kind of a program and the outputs of that research are available to researchers worldwide. That kind of an effort, that kind of a driver is where we want to focus our time. And we think that by focusing on preclinical research, we will be getting everyone to the finish line of ALS a whole lot faster than we otherwise would.
You can learn more about Andrea Lytle Peet and the film based on her journey at goonbebrave.com. Her memoir, Hope Fights Back, is available on Amazon.com and anywhere books are sold. There are currently no treatments to stop or reverse ALS, but the ALS Therapy Development Institute is working to change that. To learn more about ALS TDI and our research to end ALS, visit als.net. Thanks for listening.